for some other time, some other place, some other hero.
We are in a deep, dark hole, and we need leaders who will help us dig out.
Let us resolve that after this historic night, that we do everything in our power to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into the White House.
Do not let them take away your democracy. Make a plan right now for how you are going to get involved and vote.
We have a chance to change the course of history. We're all in this fight, you, me, and Joe, together. So let's fight with conviction.
Welcome to CBS News coverage of the fourth and final night of the virtual Democratic National Convention. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell in the nation's capital, and tonight Joe Biden looks to deliver the speech of his life as he seeks to fulfill a lifelong dream. Soon he will accept his party's nomination for president in his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. Biden has been a major figure in the Democratic Party for nearly 50 years. This will be the 7th time he's addressed a convention. He's only missed one convention, and that was in 1988 when he was recovering from a brain aneurysm. It's his third run for the nomination, and we can expect the former vice president tonight to mount a full-throated attack on President Trump's record while laying out his own goals. Tonight's official theme, America's Promise. You're watching CBS News 2020, America Decides. And joining me tonight for analysis throughout the evening, our senior political analyst and 60 Minutes correspondent, John Dickerson. Margaret Brennan, Face the Nation moderator and senior foreign affairs correspondent, and Democratic strategist Jamal Sibbons. It's a big night ahead as Joe Biden will deliver this important speech in a hall that's mostly empty because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is outside the Chase Center, which tonight looks a bit like a drive-in theater. Ed, what can we hear from the vice president tonight?
I met my husband 20
It sure
years
does,
ago.
Nora. If you hear car horns blaring behind us, they're not in traffic. They're in agreement with something being set up on screen. That's because there's about 150 carloads here invited by the Biden campaign and Delaware Democrats to witness this from a social distance. The vice president and his family will be out here later tonight to watch the fireworks. As for what Mr. Biden will say tonight, his team wouldn't share too many specifics, but say broadly he will talk about his plan to build back better after the pandemic and the economic downturn. And he'll make an argument that this country can indeed unite once again. The other interesting thing they told us today, Nora, is that that he will make an affirmative case for why he should be elected president. That's interesting in part because while he's been leading in the polls throughout the summer, by wide margins in some cases, a majority of those supporting him have shown that they are supporting him not because he's Joe Biden, but because he's simply not President Trump. I asked him about that a few weeks ago at a press conference here in Delaware. He acknowledged that dynamic, but it sounds like tonight he's actually eager to give people a reason to vote for him. As you said, he's been dreaming of this night for more than 50 years, but certainly didn't expect it to be like this.
Well, we certainly didn't expect the convention to look more like a tailgate party, where Ed is tonight there in Wilmington. And about that, I mean, here Joe Biden was expecting to be before a big crowd in Milwaukee, a battleground state, but instead he's there in his hometown of Wilmington, where the train station is named after him and where he's been for almost the last 5-6 months.
That's right. He's on his way here right now. We're about 15 minutes from where he lives. And yes, I mean, all of us were supposed to be in the home of the NBA's Milwaukee Bucks tonight in the battleground state of Wisconsin. But over the last several months, the Democrats realized they had to scale back, hold this virtual event, and then just in the last 2 weeks decided it had to come here. Thankfully, this facility, which has 3 hotels and a minor league ballpark and this event center, exists and is able to sustain what has become a modest Secret Service protected facility. and allowed the Democrats to build out this TV studio. They are kind of watching, interestingly, to see what Republicans do next week, because remember, the Republicans scrambled just in the last few weeks to go virtual, whereas Democrats have been planning to do this since at least April. So they believe they've been able to put on a much better prepared production, and it caps off tonight with what the Vice President will have to say.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you. And it will be quite an hour ahead as we're about to hear from Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. She was in the running to join Biden on the ticket. An incredible story that Tammy Duckworth has. She was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. She lost her legs in an attack in 2004. The New York Times had described her as a death-cheating, double amputee Iraq War veteran whose life story and her wheelchair whooshing through the Capitol defines the decency and service that the president's opponents have found lacking in the White House. Here now, Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Duckworth. When I first enlisted in the Army, I was eager to serve my country, yet anxious whether I'd be able to earn my way into the ranks. But I earned my wings and later commanded my own air assault unit, learning that serving and leading in the military is both a privilege and a sacrifice. To be a commander, you must always put your troops first, because one day you may order them to sacrifice everything for our great nation. To do that, leaders must command their troops respect and be worthy of their pledge to protect and defend our Constitution no matter the cost. But military service doesn't just take sacrifice from those in uniform. It's required from their families, too. My husband, Brian, was the one who rushed to Walter Reed after I was wounded in Iraq. He was the one holding my hand, waiting for me to wake up. And when I finally did, he was my rock, getting me through those hours, weeks, months of unspeakable pain and unending surgeries. He was my anchor as I relearned to walk, helping me through every step and every stumble. Our military spouses hold their families together, praying for their loved ones' safety wherever they're deployed and serving as caregivers to our disabled service members, and then picking up the pieces and starting again whenever the next tour or the next war arises. Joe Biden understands these sacrifices because he's made them himself. When his son Beau deployed to Iraq, his burden was also shouldered by his family. Joe knows the fear military families live because he's felt that dread of never knowing if your deployed loved one is safe. He understands their bravery because he has had to muster that same strength every hour of every day Beau was overseas. That's the kind of leader our service members deserve. One who understands the risks they face and who would actually protect them by doing his job as commander-in-chief. Instead, they have a coward-in-chief who won't stand up to Vladimir Putin, read his daily intelligence briefings, or even publicly admonish adversaries for reportedly putting bounties on our troops' heads. As president, Joe Biden would never let tyrants manipulate him like a puppet. He would never pervert our military to stroke his own ego. He would never turn his back on our troops or threaten them against Americans peacefully exercising their constitutional rights. Joe Biden would stand up for what's right, stand tall for our troops, and stand strong against our enemies. Because unlike Trump, Joe Biden has common decency. He has common sense. He can command, both from experience and from strength. Donald Trump doesn't deserve to call himself commander-in-chief for another 4 minutes, let alone another 4 years. Our troops deserve better. Our country deserves better. If you agree, text MORE to 30330 to elect Joe Biden, a leader who actually cares enough about America to lead.
And Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was among the first women to fly combat missions as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Want to bring in our panel, and Margaret Brennan, we're going to hear from a number of veterans. That's the start of this hour tonight. And you hear that message calling the commander-in-chief the coward-in-chief tonight, that he's not fit to lead our armed services.
And she joins a group of 70 Republican national security officials, high-ranking, a former Secretary of Defense, a former head of U.S. intelligence, who released this scathing letter today endorsing Joe Biden, but really just savaging the president, calling him unfit to lead during a crisis, saying he has gravely damaged America's role as a world leader, that he dishonored the presidency. And that's not even including the 27 officials who work directly for the Trump administration, including his former secretaries of state and defense, who've also been harshly critical of the president and his lack of preparedness that they point to. The bottom line here is Joe Biden walks in with that in his back pocket when he makes the argument that the U.S. has just demonstrated to the world we're a lot more vulnerable than we like to say, and that he is the person, he will argue, who can restore America's moral leadership, and that he can rally international alliances to defeat a common enemy. He's had his mistakes. He voted for the Iraq War, but he will try to put that under the rug and point to the argument that Republicans have made for his own election.
The argument about competence, certainly, as we've heard throughout the last 3 nights, an argument about character. John, this is night 4. Are we going to hear, and have we heard from the Democrats, really what Biden and Harris stand for in terms of a policy prescription of how where they plan to take America?
We have heard policy, you know, throughout the night. Elizabeth Warren made a case last night about putting protections in place for working families, particularly women, so that they can keep working, or in fact go out into the workplace if they have children. But one of the things we need to remember is how surprises interrupt the plans of presidents. Joe Biden had a list of policy proposals, and then COVID-19 came along. That slogan, "Build Back Better," that's new. And so what he's going to face when he comes in, he has policy ideas on immigration, climate change. He's going to have to first take care of funding the response to COVID-19 and then a stimulus package. He may be able to wrap in some of his other ideas about infrastructure, building manufacturing in America, making college less costly, increasing the minimum wage. But he's going to also have to build the economy back up, and so he's going to have to find a way to get a big stimulus package out early in his presidency.
We are about to hear from Pete Buttigieg. He, of course, gained national attention when he joined more than 24 others who pursued the Democratic nomination. Buttigieg was the youngest vying for the presidential nomination at just 38 years old, also a veteran. Let's listen in now to the man known as Mayor Pete.
He volunteered and was deployed to Afghanistan, then returned home to Indiana to become a highly effective public servant. Say hi to Mayor Pete.
Good evening. Beau Biden lived a life of service, in office and in uniform. When you put your life on the line for this country, you do it not because it's the country you live in, but because it's a country you believe in. I believe in this country because America, uniquely, holds the promise of a place where everyone can belong. We know that for too many and for too long, that promise has been denied. But we also know America is at its best when we make that circle of belonging wider. Just over 10 years ago, I joined a military where firing me because of who I am wasn't just possible, it was policy. Now, in 2020, it is unlawful in America to fire someone because of who they are or who they love. The very ring on my finger, a wedding we celebrated, here where I'm standing, reflects how this country can change. Love makes my marriage real, but political courage made it possible, including that of Joe Biden, who stepped out ahead even of this party when he said that marriage equality ought to be the law of the land. There is a long way to go. But if this much can change between 2010 and 2020, imagine what could change between now and 2030. Imagine what we could achieve, this coalition we are building this very season, gathering progressives and moderates, independents, and even what I like to call future former Republicans, standing for an America where everyone belongs. Joe Biden is right. This is a contest for the soul of the nation. And to me, that contest is not between good Americans and evil Americans. It's the struggle to call out what is good in every American. It's up to us. Will America be a place where faith is about healing and not exclusion? Can we become a country that lives up to the truth that Black lives matter? Will we handle questions of science and medicine by turning to scientists and doctors? Will we see to it that no one who works full-time can live in poverty? I trust Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to guide us toward that better future because I've seen up close their empathy and their capacity, just as I've seen my fellow Americans' capacity to support and include one another in new ways and do better by the promise of America. The day I was born, the idea of an out candidate seeking any federal office at all was laughable. Yet earlier this year, I campaigned for the presidency, often with my husband Chasten at my side, winning delegates to this very convention. Now I come to this convention proudly supporting Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, joining fellow Democrats who were squaring off in competition just a few months ago. A number of us recently got together to talk about the Joe we know.
And that was Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Still to come, we'll hear from billionaire Michael Bloomberg, and Joe Biden makes his acceptance speech. You're watching CBS News coverage of the Democratic National Convention.
You could think of this sort of like Survivor or the Out Here Music.
What stands behind the yard sign of an ADT home? It's your world, safer and more secure against the unknown and unimaginable. With tested, trusted, 24/7 protection and a system we help you customize with video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, locks and lights, carbon monoxide detection, and fire and smoke alarms. Now, get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring starting at just $28.99 a month. About $1 a day for ADT. Call 1-800-ADT-ASAP.
I'd like to tell you about my great-grandmother.
My grandma.
My cousin.
My great-great-grandmother. She was all of 4 feet 11, but very tenacious. Very independent woman.
Driven, passionate. Grit, perseverance.
She marched.
She wrote.
She demanded.
She was proud to pass on a legacy of civic-mindedness to her descendants. I'm very proud to carry on her story. Her story. Find their stories.
Make them count.
At Ancestry.
As the Republican Party makes its case,
we are going to win 4 more years.
Nora O'Donnell and the CBS News political team are there.
Coming to you live from our nation's capital.
The 2020 Republican National Convention, Monday, live on CBS. And watch free with the CBS News app.
I think Joe Biden will be a great leader for the United States. Like me, on the day of my jump into Germany, I think Joe Biden cares about doing his proper duty for the United States. And if he's elected, that's what he will do.
That was 95-year-old World War II veteran and lifelong Republican Ed Good, now endorsing Joe Biden. And continuing one of the themes from the Democrats tonight, the idea that Biden would be a better commander-in-chief than President Trump. Want to talk more about what voters want to hear tonight from Anthony Salvanto. He is our Director of Elections and Surveys. And so, Anthony, what have you learned?
Hey, Nora, so when we asked voters what they were looking for in a presidential candidate, 2 things came up to the top of the list: someone who was honest and someone who is knowledgeable, among other important things. So he certainly wants to hit those themes. But let me show you something else, because it raises the question of, do you motivate the base with a speech like this, or do you try to persuade other voters to come into your camp? Well, take a look at this. I went back and looked at the history of the CBS News poll for what kinds of convention bounces or bumps in the polls new candidates got after a convention. Back in the 90s and even up to 2000, we saw Democrats get double-digit bumps after their events. But more recently, Obama 08, Clinton 2016, single-digit bumps. And there's a reason for that. It's because the country is so polarized now that it's much harder to move the needle. Consider even now, many voters, in fact, most voters, say they've already decided and they probably won't change their minds. So it may be more about motivating the base with this speech, Nora.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you. And we've been hearing from some of the people Biden shared the debate stage with, and no candidate has ever spent more of his own money on the campaign trail than Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Remember that candidacy? He spent more than $500 million in ads to win just 31 delegates in just 4 months, and then he dropped out. Now, he has pledged to spend even more to defeat President Trump, and so tonight, Mayor Bloomberg gets a prime-time spot in the middle of this Democratic convention to explain why he supports Joe Biden and also why he does not believe. Here's
I've never been
Mayor
much for
Bloomberg.
partisan politics. I've supported Democrats, Republicans, and independents. Hell, I've actually been a Democrat, Republican, and independent. It's all about people. And the two people running for president couldn't be more different. One believes in facts, one does not. One listens to experts, the other thinks he knows everything. One looks forward and sees strength in America's diversity. The other looks backwards and sees immigrants as enemies and white supremacists as allies. Here's another difference. One has proven he knows how to handle a crisis by helping to lead the economic turnaround after the 2008 recession, while the other has not only failed to lead, he has made the current crisis much worse. When confronted with the biggest calamity any president has faced in the modern era, Donald Trump spent the year downplaying the threat, ignoring science, and recommending quack cures, which let COVID-19 spread much faster than it should have, leaving hundreds of thousands needlessly sick or dead. He has failed the American people catastrophically. 4 years ago, I came before this very convention and said, New Yorkers know a con when we see one. But tonight, I'm not asking you to vote against Donald Trump because he's a bad guy. I'm urging you to vote against him because he's done a bad job. Today, unemployment is at historic highs, and small businesses are struggling just to survive. It didn't have to be this way. Before I ran for mayor, I spent 20 years running a business I started from scratch. So I want to ask small business owners and their employees one question, and it's a question for everyone. Would you rehire or work for someone who ran your business into the ground and who always does what's best for him or her, even when it hurts the company, and whose reckless decisions put you in danger, and who spends more time tweeting than working? If the answer is no, why the hell would we ever rehire Donald Trump for another 4 years? Trump says we should vote for him because he's a great businessman? Really? He drove his companies into bankruptcy 6 times, always leaving behind customers and contractors who had cheated and swindled and stopped doing business with him. Well, this time, all of us are paying the price, and we can't let him get away with it again. Donald says we should vote for him because the economy was great before the virus. Huh? Biden and Obama created more jobs over their last 3 years than the Trump administration did over their first 3. And economic growth was higher under Biden and Obama than under Trump. In fact, while Biden helped save 1 million auto industry jobs, Trump has lost 250,000 manufacturing jobs. So when Trump says he wants to make America great again, he's making a pretty good case for Joe Biden. Look, our goal shouldn't be to bring back the pandemic economy. It should be, as Joe says, to build it back better. Joe's economic plan will create clean energy jobs that help fight another crisis that Trump is ignoring, climate change. And Joe will rebuild our crumbling roads and bridges, something Trump has incessantly talked about doing. But in the last 3.5 years, he hasn't done anything. What a joke. And let me tell you a little secret. Donald Trump's economic plan was to give a huge tax cut to guys like me who didn't need it, and then lie about it to everyone else. Well, Joe will roll back that tax cut that I got so we can fund things our whole country needs, like training for adults who have lost jobs, and making college more affordable, and investing in American research and development so that the products of tomorrow are made today by American workers. You know, growing up, I was taught to believe that America is the greatest country in the world, not because we won the Second World War, but because of why we fought it, for freedom, democracy, and equality. My favorite childhood book was called Johnny Tremaine, about a Boston boy who joins the Sons of Liberty at the dawn of the American Revolution. At the end of the book, Johnny stands on Lexington Commons and sees a nation that is, quote, green with spring, dreaming of the future. That's the America I know and love. And that's the America we are in danger of losing under this president. So let's put an end to this whole sorry chapter in American history and elect leaders who will bring integrity and stability, sanity, and competence back to the White House. Joe and Kamala, go get them for all of us.
And tough message there from Mayor Bloomberg, Jamal. I mean, who does that invite into the Democratic Party, that message?
Yeah, I think he must be. There are a lot of Democrats out there who really are aspirational, and there's a history in the Democratic Party of people who want this. You know, this virus has been horrible for African-American business owners. I mean, there's one study, I think that's been even CBS News, 1 million people, 1 million African-Americans have businesses in February. 440,000 of those businesses have closed, and probably for good. This is a major problem. In the last recession, at the end of the financial crisis, we had 50% of black homeowners lost what they had. So a lot of African-Americans are thinking about not just the politics, but the economics of moving forward.
I just want to introduce now, we're going to hear from Brayden Harrington. He struggled as a child with a stutter, and then he met Joe Biden, and Joe Biden has stayed in touch with him. Let's listen.
Stutter. It was really amazing to hear that someone like me became vice president. He told me about a book of poems by Yeats he would read out loud to practice. He showed me how he marks his addresses to make them easier to say out loud. So I did the same thing today. And now I'm here talking to you today about the future, about our future. My family often says when the world feels better before talking about something normal, like going to the movies. We all want the world to feel better. We need the world to feel better. I'm just a regular kid, and in a short amount of time, Joe Biden made me more confident about something that's bothered me my whole life. Joe Biden cared. Imagine what he could do for all of us. Kids like me are counting on you to elect someone we can all look up to. Someone who cares. Someone who will make our country and the world feel better. We're counting on you to elect Joe Biden.
And that's Brayden Harrington, who is now being tutored by Joe Biden, who has who struggled with a stutter, I should say, when he was growing up. There's that famous story, Joe Biden's mother, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan, who told Joe Biden when he said to her, "Joey, it's because you're so bright you can't get the thoughts out quickly enough." And then when Joe came home from school one day, beaten up, by bigger kids. His mother said to him, "You go right back out there, you bloody their nose so you can walk down the street the next day." And that's one of the stories that, if you followed Joe Biden the past 50 years, he tells that story about his mother. But it's always a reminder of a struggle, part of this struggle that Joe Biden has overcome as they try to put together his biography, overcoming and healing, that they are trying to translate into what he would do as President of the United States. And we are just minutes away from Joe Biden's acceptance speech. You're watching CBS News live coverage of the Democratic National Convention.
The ADT yard sign stands watch over your home and family with tested, trusted 24/7 protection. Now get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring starting at just $28.99 a month, about $1 a day. Call 1-800-ADT-ASAP.
When we started Carvana, they told us that selling cars 100% online wouldn't work. But we went to work, building an experience that lets you shop over 17,000 cars from home, creating a coast-to-coast network to deliver your car as soon as tomorrow, recruiting an army of customer advocates to make your experience incredible, and putting you in control of the whole thing with powerful technology. That's why we've become the nation's fastest growing retailer, because our customers love it. See for yourself at Carvana.com.
And that was a performance by John Legend and Common, part of tonight's earlier tribute to civil rights icon and Georgia Representative John Lewis.
I think he is the singular figure that has tried to carry out the work of our nonviolent campaigns into the halls of Congress.
From day one, John Lewis was a role model for the members of Congress, whether they were freshmen or here a long time, because he brought with him a kind of heft, a weightiness of purpose.
I got arrested a few times during the 60s. 40 times. And since I've been in Congress, another 5 times. The means by which we struggle must be consistent with the end we seek.
Someone who has navigated thorny issues of policy, not by castigating alone, but by also encouraging people to be better than they think they can be.
Today we are considering a fair housing measure which not only protects our nation's minorities, but it protects the needs of those with disabilities and families with children. How long do we have to wait before we decide to ban assault weapons? We have another opportunity to bring more of our citizens into political participation. I have on my marching shoes. That's right. I'm fired up. I'm ready to march.
And all of these decades later, while he and others of his generation achieved much, we're still fighting against police brutality and fighting for our voting rights. And so we best honor him by continuing to fight the good fights that he fought, by staying in good trouble. We will create a beloved community. We will redeem the soul of America. As a nation and as a people, we will get there.
And the memory of John Lewis is inspiring Democratic leaders, including the speech last night by President Barack Obama, that the struggle that they face today is not as difficult as the one that John Lewis and many of those that fought during the civil rights era for the right to vote. John Lewis arrested 40 times, another 5 times while he was a member of Congress. And that phrase that is used, that the paraphrasing Martin Luther King, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and it takes time in order to do that. We're going to be hearing shortly from Joe Biden, but first he's going to be introduced by his 2 children, Ashley and Hunter. His other son, Beau, passed away from brain cancer in 2015. Beau served as Delaware Attorney General, and that is when he worked alongside Kamala Harris when she was California's Attorney General. Let's listen in.
Beau is our brother.
We want to tell you what kind of president our dad will be.
He will be tough
and honest,
caring, and principled.
He'll listen. He'll be there when you need him.
He'll tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it.
He'll never let you down.
He'll be rock steady.
The strongest shoulder you can ever lean on.
He'll beam with pride every time you succeed.
He'll make your grandkids feel that what they've got to say matters.
He'll treat everyone with respect, no matter who you are.
He'll get up no matter how many times he's been knocked down.
He'll be the worst enemy any bully ever saw.
He'll be the best friend you've ever had.
He'll love you with all of his heart.
And if you give him your cell phone number,
he's going to call it.
How do we know?
Because he's been that way our whole lives.
He's been a great father.
And we think he'll be a great president.
Beau isn't with us any longer.
But he is still very much alive in our hearts. And we can still hear his strong voice.
Just like it was yesterday.
Just like it was yesterday.
In 2008 and 2012, he introduced our dad at those conventions.
And if he was here, we're pretty sure we'd know what he'd say.
So before we show you a film about our dad's journey, we wanted to give Beau the last word. Beau?
Beau, take it away.
In moments both public and private, he's the father I've always known, the grandfather my children love and adore. My father, my hero, Joe Biden.
And that is part of the struggle that Joe Biden faced, the loss of an adult child, Beau Biden, to glioblastoma, a death that in part led to the Biden family deciding he would not run for president in 2016. Joe Biden has been on the national stage for nearly half a century. You might recall he was just 29 years old when he was first elected to the Senate. And now, 77, Biden would be the oldest man to become president if elected. CBS's Major Garrett looks at a career that has spanned the decades.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was born in 1942. When the economy collapsed in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and his father lost his job, the Bidens and 9-year-old Joey moved to Delaware.
My dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up.
Biden played football at the University of Delaware and attended law school at Syracuse University. By 1972,
if you like what you see, help me out. If not, vote for the other fellow.
He was elected to the United States Senate as a long shot, tell it like it is, 29-year-old.
I think one of the reasons I won is they have more confidence in me than with other people that I will say what I think.
Weeks later, his wife Nelia and their daughter were killed in a traffic accident that also injured sons Beau and Hunter.
I felt like a piece of me died.
Biden took the oath of office in a hospital. A single-father senator, Biden commuted from Wilmington to Washington aboard Amtrak to be home with his kids at night. He met Jill Jacobs, a teacher, on a blind date in 1975. They married 2 years later.
Everyone knows I love her more than she loves me. My name is Joe Biden. I want to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
He ran for president in 1987, but dropped out after being accused of plagiarism. A year later, he suffered 2 brain aneurysms, but would later write he had no fear of dying.
Judge Thomas.
Biden chaired the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation hearing in 1991. Last year, he apologized to Anita Hill, who accused Thomas of sexual harassment, but faced scrutiny and hostility.
To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved.
He drafted the 1994 crime bill. It pushed crime down, but incarceration rates up.
Hi, Penny. I'm Joe Biden, running for president.
His 2008 White House campaign went nowhere.
The vast majority of the people in Iowa haven't made up their mind yet.
When they did,
Joe Biden!
Barack Obama named Biden his running mate. In the White House, Biden oversaw stimulus spending and jumped ahead of the president by endorsing gay marriage.
And what this is all about is a simple proposition. Who do you love?
Biden told President Obama to wait for better confirmation before launching the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Memorably, he said this about the passage of Obamacare. Biden commits verbal gaffes. He's known for them. Some innocent.
We choose truth over facts.
Others less so.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Biden passed on another run for the presidency in 2016 after his son Beau died of brain cancer. In 2020, he finished 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire, but bounced back to win South Carolina.
And we are very much alive.
That propelled him through Super Tuesday and a pandemic to tonight's acceptance of the Democratic nomination.
So all those who have been knocked down, counted out, left behind, let me say to you, this is your campaign.
And that's probably many of the themes that we will hear from Joe Biden tonight as he makes this acceptance speech. Let's check in one more time with political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who is there in Wilmington, Delaware. Is it a packed parking lot?
About as packed as is acceptable these days with social distancing. Yes, as we had said earlier, about 150 carloads of mostly Delaware Democrats. This is probably the biggest night in Delaware political history since they were the first state to sign the Constitution. So kind of a big deal around here. But this is what the Biden campaign put together very quickly when they realized that they could not get to Milwaukee for the convention. We're told that Biden is now here. We'll be taking the stage shortly. And watching that great recap from Major, I can't help but think back to his 2008 presidential campaign. I was a slightly younger reporter and was one of the few who went to see him at one point in Iowa. He was driving around the state in an Aerostar van with Hunter and 2 other aides. And it was the morning after Benazir Bhutto was killed in Pakistan. We talked about that for length. He went and talked to about 20 people. A few weeks later, he was out of the race. 4 years later, he didn't win Iowa again. And here he is tonight, again, fulfilling a dream that he's had for several decades.
An important point to make out in his 3rd try, finally winning the Democratic nomination. Ed O'Keefe in Wilmington, thank you. Want to bring our panel back in. And John Dickerson, sort of as you're becoming now our resident presidential historian and author.
Yeah, well, that's what I've asked everyone to call me. So,
but you know, because you know so much about presidents, you've read all these speeches. What makes a good convention speech?
Well, they're different for each
person who runs, and so Joe Biden will have a different one. Mostly, though, it's a garment has been stitched for him over the last several nights. He's got all these qualities. Well, he has to put that on. He's simply, the first thing he has to do is just walk into the garment that's been prepared for him and fill out some of those things so people know it's not just spin, but this comes from this guy, especially somebody who's been sold over the last several nights as having this kind of core to him that is, you know, been with him all his life. But the other thing that's important is he stood at a lot of podiums. He stands at the podium tonight as one of the 2 people who might be leader of the free world at the end of January next year. People will be looking at him in a very different way, and he has to give a sense of command. And finally, hope. This has been a pretty vinegary convention over the last several days, and it's continued into tonight. He has to be able to say that the future will be bright for reasons X, Y, and Z, and people need to feel that, not just in their head, but in their heart.
Also want to bring in Maria Elena Salinas. And what about that? How much of this speech really has to be inspirational? I mean, is that what Joe Biden is good at?
Of course he's good at that, but I think it's going to require a lot more than just being inspirational. We know how empathetic he is. We've been hearing it all week. But, you know, we have heard a lot of attacks from President Trump, and he needs to make it very clear that he's not all those things that Mr. Trump says, that he's not, he doesn't hate America, that he's not against God, that he is not trying to defund the police, that he will not take your guns away. It's not enough to say he's lying and denying it. I think he needs to spell it out and say exactly what he represents and what he has to offer concretely to the American people.
Maria Elena, thank you. And Margaret Brennan, you know, so much of Joe Biden's appeal is his likability, that empathy that many people say he's, when you're sick or if someone in your family dies, he's the first person to reach out. But on the issue of competence and his record, I mean, he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He frequently points out he's met more world leaders than just about anybody else out there. His foreign policy experience is also part of his competency.
It is, and he'll make that argument that he's been in the Situation Room in addition to all those years in Congress. But look, someone who was in the Situation Room with him, the former Defense Secretary Bob Gates, says Joe Biden's been wrong in foreign policy for 40 years. That said, as we laid out at the beginning of all of this, there are about 100 national security officials who say he will be better than the alternative, no matter what that is. But Joe Biden will try to paint a picture of restoration of American moral leadership, of global leadership, of being able to rebuild alliances. Some of that may be nostalgia, given that the world has changed, and President Trump may be a symptom, not a cause of that. But it's an argument that he needs to make to the American people in the affirmative as to what he will actually do. We haven't heard a lot of that.
And Jamal, one of, I think, the tasks for Joe Biden tonight, when I use the word inspirational, he also has to be motivational. I mean, we've seen Donald Trump's supporters are much more enthusiastic for him. Hillary Clinton lost the Electoral College vote because of 70,000 votes in 3 states, even though she won the popular vote across America. What can he do to do that, to excite those demographic groups that need to turn out?
We know there are a couple different populations here. People over the age of 35 or 40, they're motivated. Donald Trump is their motivation. They're going to show up and get out. People who are in that 18 to 29, 18 to 33-year-old range, they're the ones who are a little bit dodgier right now on the Democratic side. So Donald Trump's going to have to, Joe Biden is going to have to really speak to them about the future agenda, maybe capture as much as he did from that Bernie Sanders commission they had together, and then to figure out how they move forward as a Democratic Party around these progressive goals.
I just wonder how much you can do of that online and on TV and not in person.
Oh, but I mean,
barnstorming the states, isn't that a way that you turn out the vote?
No, but I forgot. Kamala Harris. He imported excitement. Kamala Harris is his excitement meter.
And he's pitching to an audience also, though, of where he's about to pitch right now.
Yeah.
And now let's go to Wilmington, Delaware, to hear from the Democrats' choice to be President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Good evening. Ella Baker, a giant of the civil rights movement, left us with this wisdom. Give people light, and they will find the way. Give people light. Those are words for our time. The current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much division. Here and now, I give you my word. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I will be an ally of the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America. We'll choose hope over fear, facts over fiction, fairness over privilege. I'm a proud Democrat, and I'll be proud to carry the banner of our party into the general election. So it's with great honor and humility I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America. But while I'll be a Democratic candidate, I will be an American president. I'll work hard for those who didn't support me, as hard for them as I did for those who did vote for me. That's the job of a president, to represent all of us, not just our base or our party. This is not a partisan moment. This must be an American moment. It's a moment that calls for hope and light and love. Hope for our future, light to see our way forward, and love for one another. America isn't just a collection of clashing interests of red states or blue states. We're so much bigger than that. We're so much better than that. You know, nearly a century ago, Franklin Roosevelt pledged a New Deal in a time of massive unemployment, uncertainty, and fear. Stricken by a disease, stricken by a virus, FDR insisted that he would recover and prevail, and he believed America could as well. And he did, and we can as well. This campaign isn't just about winning votes. It's about winning the heart and, yes, the soul of America. Winning it for the generous among us, not the selfish. Winning it for workers who keep this country going, not just the privileged few at the top. Winning it for those communities who have known the injustice of a knee on the neck. For all the young people who have known only America being in rising inequity and shrinking opportunity. They deserve the experience of America's promise. They deserve to experience it in full. You know, no generation ever knows what history will ask of it. All we can ever know is whether we're ready when that moment arrives. And now history has delivered us to one of the most difficult moments America's ever faced. Four historic crises, all at the same time. A perfect storm. The worst pandemic in over 100 years. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The most compelling call for racial justice since the 60s. And the undeniable realities and just the accelerating threats of climate change. So the question for us is simple. Are we ready? I believe we are. We must be. You know, all elections are important. But we know in our bones this one is more consequential. As many have said, America is at an inflection point. A time of real peril, but also of extraordinary possibilities. We can choose a path of becoming angrier, less hopeful, more divided, a path of shadow and suspicion, or we can choose a different path and together take this chance to heal, to reform, to unite, a path of hope and light. This is a life-changing election. This will determine what America is going to look like for a long, long time. Character is on the ballot. Compassion is on the ballot. Decency, science, democracy, they're all on the ballot. Who we are as a nation, what we stand for, and most importantly, who we want to be, that's all on the ballot. And the choice could not be more clear. No rhetoric is needed. Just judge this president on the facts. 5 million Americans infected by COVID-19. More than 170,000 Americans have died. By far the worst performance of any nation on earth. More than 50 million people have filed for unemployment this year. More than 10 million people are going to lose their health insurance this year. Nearly 1 in 6 small businesses have closed this year. And this president, if he's reelected, you know what will happen. Cases and deaths will remain far too high. More mom-and-pop businesses will close their doors, and this time for good. Working families will struggle to get by. And yet the wealthiest 1% will get tens of billions of dollars in new tax breaks. And the assault on the Affordable Care Act will continue until it's destroyed, taking insurance away from more than 20 million people, including more than 15 million people on Medicaid, and getting rid of the protections that President Obama worked so hard to get passed for people who have 100 million more people who have pre-existing conditions. And speaking of President Obama, a man I was honored to serve alongside for 8 years as vice president, let me take this moment to say something we don't say nearly enough. Thank you, Mr. President. You were a great president, a president our children could and did look up to. No one's going to say that about the current occupant of the White House. What we know about this president is if he's given 4 more years, he'll be what he's been for the last 4 years. A president who takes no responsibility, refuses to lead, blames others, cozies up to dictators, and fans the flames of hate and division. He'll wake up every day believing the job is all about him, never about you. Is that the American you want for you, your family, your children? I see a different America, one that's generous and strong, selfless and humble. It's an America we can rebuild together. As president, the first step I will take will be to get control of the virus that has ruined so many lives. Because I understand something this president hasn't from the beginning. We will never get our economy back on track. We will never get our kids safely back in schools. We'll never have our lives back until we deal with this virus. The tragedy of where we are today is it didn't have to be this bad. Just look around. It's not this bad in Canada or Europe or Japan or almost anywhere else in the world. And the president keeps telling us the virus is going to disappear. He keeps waiting for a miracle. Well, I have news for him. No miracle is coming. We lead the world in confirmed cases. We lead the world in deaths. Our economy is in tatters with Black, Latino, Asian American, Native American communities bearing the brunt of it. And after all this time, the president still does not have a plan. Well, I do. If I'm your president, on day 1, we'll implement the national strategy I've been laying out since March. We'll develop and deploy rapid tests with results available immediately. We'll make the medical supplies and protective equipment that our country needs. And we'll make them here in America, so we will never again be at the mercy of China or other foreign countries in order to protect our own people. We'll make sure our schools have the resources they need to be open, safe, and effective. We'll put politics aside. We'll take the muzzle off our experts so the public gets the information they need and deserve. Honest, unvarnished truth. They can handle it. We'll have a national mandate to wear a mask, not as a burden, but as a patriotic duty to protect one another. In short, we'll do what we should have done from the very beginning. Our current president has failed in his most basic duty to the nation. He's failed to protect us. He's failed to protect America. And my fellow Americans, that is unforgivable. As president, I'll make you a promise. I'll protect America. I will defend us from every attack, seen and unseen, always, without exception, every time. Look, I understand. I understand how hard it is to have any hope right now. On this summer night, let me take a moment to speak to those of you who have lost the most. I have some idea how it feels to lose someone you love. I know that deep black hole that opens up in the middle of your chest and you feel like you're being sucked into it. I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes. But I've learned two things. First, your loved one may have left this earth, but they'll never leave your heart. They'll always be with you. You'll always hear them. And second, I found the best way through pain and loss and grief is to find purpose. As God's children, each of us have a purpose in our lives. We have a great purpose as a nation to open the doors of opportunity to all Americans, to save our democracy, to be a light to the world once again, and finally to live up to and make real the words written in the sacred documents that founded this nation, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, my dad was an honorable, decent man. He got knocked down a few times pretty hard, but he always got back up. He worked hard, and he built a great middle-class life for our family. He used to say, Joey, I don't expect the government to solve my problems, but I sure in hell expect them to understand them. And then he'd say, Joey, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. I've never forgotten those lessons. That's why my economic plan is all about jobs, dignity, respect, and community. Together we can and will rebuild our economy. And when we do, we'll not only build back, we'll build back better. With modern roads, bridges, highways, broadband, ports and airports as a new foundation for economic growth, with pipes that transport clean water to every community, with 5 million new manufacturing and technology jobs, so the future is made in America. With a healthcare system that lowers premiums, deductibles, drug prices, by building on the Affordable Care Act he's trying to rip away. With an education system that trains our people for the best jobs of the 21st century. There's not a single thing American workers can't do. And where cost doesn't prevent young people from going to college, and student debt doesn't crush them when they get out. With a child care and elder care system that makes it possible for parents to go to work and for the elderly to stay in their homes with dignity. With an immigration system that powers our economy and reflects our values. And with newly empowered labor unions. They're the ones that built the middle class. With equal pay for women, with rising wages, you can raise a child on, a family on. And yes, we're going to do more than praise our essential workers. We're finally going to pay them. Pay them. We can and we will deal with climate change. It's not only a crisis, it's an enormous opportunity. An opportunity for America to lead the world in clean energy and create millions of new, good-paying jobs in the process. And we can pay for these investments by ending loopholes, unnecessary loopholes, and the president's $1.3 trillion tax giveaway to the wealthiest 1% and the biggest, most profitable corporations, some of which do not pay any tax at all. Because we don't need a tax code that rewards wealth more than it rewards work. I'm not looking to punish anyone. Far from it. But it's long past time the wealthiest people and the biggest corporations in this country paid their fair share. And for our seniors, Social Security is a sacred obligation, a sacred promise made. They paid for. The current president is threatening to break that promise. He's proposing to eliminate a tax that pays for almost half the Social Security without any way of making up for that lost revenue, resulting in cuts. I will not let that happen. If I'm your president, we're going to protect Social Security and Medicare. You have my word. One of the most powerful voices we hear in the country today is from our young people. They're speaking to the inequity and injustice that has grown up in America. Economic injustice, racial injustice, environmental injustice. I hear their voices. If you listen, you can hear them too. And whether it's the existential threat posed by climate change, the daily fear of being gunned down in school, or the inability to get started in your first job, it will be the work of the next president to restore the promise of America to everyone. And I'm not going to have to do it alone, because I'll have a great vice president at my side. Senator Kamala Harris. She's a powerful voice for this nation. Her story is the American story. She knows about all the obstacles thrown in the way of so many in our country. Women, black Americans, South Asian Americans, immigrants, the left out and the left behind. But she's overcome every obstacle she's ever faced. No one's been tougher on the big banks and the gun lobby. No one's been tougher in calling out the current administration for its extremism, its failure to follow the law, its failure to simply tell the truth. Kamala and I both draw from our families. That's where we get our strength. For Kamala, it's Doug and their families. For me, it's Jill and ours. I've said many times, no man deserves one great love in his life, let alone two. But I've known two. After losing my first wife in that car accident, Jill came into my life. She put our family back together. She's an educator, a mom, a military mom, and an unstoppable force. If she puts her mind to it, just get out of the way. She's going to get it done. She was a great second lady, and I know she'll make a great first lady for this nation. She loves this country so much. And I'll always have the strength that can only come from family. Hunter, Ashley, all our grandchildren, my brothers, my sister, they give me courage. They lift me up. While he's no longer with us, Bo inspires me every day. Bo served our nation in uniform. A year in Iraq, a decorated Iraqi war veteran. So I take very personally and the profound responsibility of serving as Commander-in-Chief. I'll be a president who will stand with our allies and friends and make it clear to our adversaries the days of cozying up to dictators is over. Under President Biden, America will not turn a blind eye to Russian bounties on the heads of American soldiers. Nor will I put up with foreign interference in our most sacred democratic exercise, voting. And I'll always stand for our values of human rights and dignity. I'll work in common purpose for a more secure, peaceful, and prosperous world. History has thrust one more urgent task on us. Will we be the generation that finally wipes out the stain of racism from our national character? I believe we're up to it. I believe we're ready. Just a week ago yesterday was the 3rd anniversary of the events in Charlottesville. Close your eyes. Remember what you saw on television. Remember seeing those neo-Nazis and Klansmen and white supremacists coming out of fields with lighted torches, veins bulging, spewing the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. Remember the violent clash that ensued between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And remember what the president said when asked? He said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides. It was a wake-up call for us as a country, and for me, a call to action. At that moment, I knew I'd have to run, because my father taught us that silence was complicity, and I can never remain silent or complicit. At the time, I said we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. And we are. You know, one of the most important conversations I've had this entire campaign, it was with someone who was much too young to vote. I met with 6-year-old Gianna Floyd the day before her daddy, George Floyd, was laid to rest. She's an incredibly brave little girl. And I'll never forget it. When I leaned down to speak to her, she looked in my eyes and she said, and I quote, "Daddy changed the world. Daddy changed the world." Her words burrowed deep into my heart. Maybe George Floyd's murder was a breaking point. Maybe John Lewis's passing the inspiration. But however it's come to be, however it's happened, America's ready, in John's words, to lay down, quote, "the heavy burden of hate at last," and to end the hard work of rooting out our systemic racism. You know, American history tells us that it's been in our darkest moments that we've made our greatest progress, that we found the light. In this dark moment, I believe we're poised to make great progress again, that we can find the light once more. You know, many people have heard me say this, but I've always believed you can define America in one word: possibilities. The defining feature of America: everything is possible. That in America, everyone, and I mean everyone, should be given an opportunity to go as far as their dreams and God-given ability will take them. We can never lose that. In times as challenging as these, I believe there's only one way forward. As a united America, united in our pursuit of a more perfect union, united in our dreams of a better future for us and for our children, united in our determination to make the coming years bright. Are you ready? I believe we are. This is a great nation. We're a good and decent people. For Lord's sake, this is the United States of America. And there's never been anything we've been able to accomplish when we've done it together. The Irish poet Seamus Heaney once wrote, "History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. This is our moment to make hope and history rhyme. With passion and purpose, let us begin, you and I together, one nation, under God, united in our love for America, united in our love for each other. For love is more powerful than hate. Hope is more powerful than fear. And light is more powerful than dark. This is our moment. This is our mission. May history be able to say that the end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight, as love and hope and light join in the battle for the soul of the nation. And this is a battle we will win, and we'll do it together. I promise you. Thank you, and may God bless you, and may God protect our troops. Good night.
And the Democratic presidential nominee for the year 2020, Joe Biden, greeted now by his wife. There was great expectation heading into this night that Joe Biden, who has been on the political stage for almost half a century and has given tens of thousands of speeches, that this would be a make-or-break moment for him. This was one of the strongest speeches of Joe Biden's career. He spoke directly to the camera. I did not catch him miss a beat, as Joe Biden is known to flub every once in a while or to veer off script. He spoke passionately and from the heart. And as he said, we are in a battle for the soul of the nation. Greeted now by his vice presidential pick, Kamala Harris, the senator from California, and her husband, Doug, and the virtual applause from around the country and the tailgate party there in his home state of Delaware. I want to bring in our panel now. John Dickerson, your thoughts?
Well, this is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump's handling of COVID-19, is his argument. And he said, I have a plan for taking care of that. And then he gave pretty much the exact opposite of Donald Trump's line, it is what it is, which we've heard all week. He took his personal suffering throughout his life, and he spoke directly to those families of the 170,000 Americans who lost their lives, playing the pastoral role of the president, really, in this moment. It was a thoroughly normal speech for a country that the Biden campaign thinks wants to get off the circus ride, or the carnival ride it's been on. This looked like an old-fashioned presidential speech, and in that sense, this constrained convention, the theater of it, looked like he was giving a national address rather than a campaign speech in a convention.
And Margaret, I was struck because he talked about restoring the promise of America, but he said in order to do that, we have to lay down the burden of hate and racism, and posing the question, will this be the generation to do that?
He did, indeed. And it was interesting because one of the phrases that stood out to me, because it seems like a parallel to Donald Trump, was he talked about the left out and the left behind. In that, he put immigrants, people of color, a parallel to the forgotten man and women that you often hear Donald Trump refer to, particularly in the heartland of America. It's that same idea of being left behind in an economy, left behind by this pandemic, is what he would argue and did there, that all of the disparities that existed before have been worsened, deepened, broadened in a way that has left people behind. He said, let's end this chapter of darkness. Another very strong phrase there to leave us with.
Maria Elena Salinas is also with us, and I know you've covered 9 conventions, and so you have seen on both tickets many of these types of speeches. Your view?
I thought it was a great speech. I think it was better than what many of us expected, because he was able to combine both the show that empathy, show that hope, give people that hope, but also lay out at least some of what his plan is. And you know what they say, that it's not so, people remember you not so much for what you say, but how you make them feel. So I think it was important for him tonight to make people feel that hope, to make people feel empathetic, to make people think that, you know, the future is better, that lightness is more important than darkness. And it was those types of phrases that he used that made people feel like maybe this is a time for us to put away all this hatred, put away all this negativity, and start looking at an America, at a United States that can go into the lightness and get away from the darkness.
And we're watching now Joe Biden and Jill Biden with masks on, appearing before that crowd that is tailgating and greeting all of them. And Jamal Simmons, you've worked on many of these presidential campaigns, and I know you've seen a number of Joe Biden speeches through the years.
I have, and I got to tell you, this is really great theater that they've put together. They have found a way to get a crowd together that is socially distanced, but with the camera shots, looks like everybody's sort of packed in, but they're not. And everybody's very excited. You know, the thing I noticed tonight, in the Democratic Party, there is this wrestle between are our problems because of Donald Trump, or did Donald Trump create, or did our problems exist, and then Donald Trump was the creation of the problems? He found a way, Joe Biden, tonight to tip his hat to that. And he talked about work and jobs and the dignity of work, which is something that you hear a lot among labor unions and that type of crowd. He really did say, I'm gonna not, this is the Build Back Better. It's not just about replacing Trump. It's about making the country better than it was before Donald Trump even got here.
The fireworks of 2020 are the balloon drop of the past decades. Ed O'Keefe is there in Wilmington, Delaware, with the fireworks as his backdrop. Ed?
Nora, you said it. This is the 2020 version of balloons. Instead of coming down, they're going up. Biden and Harris are on a stage at the front of this parking lot looking up over the minor league ballpark in Wilmington. for a party that was put together in about 10 days. As we said earlier, a few hundred carloads of people waving American flags, signs that say Joe, and they're replicating here virtual or other drive-in parties that are being held across the country. But think of it, a man who's waited about 50 years to get nominated by his party to be president gets to do it tonight unexpectedly in his own hometown. Talk about a dream come true.
And Joe, you have traveled the campaign trail before the pandemic, been with all of the Democrats who were vying for their party's nomination. Your take on his speech tonight?
Oh, an incredible set of remarks. And I think to John's point earlier, more of a presidential style address. And we heard from our colleagues in the room that the teleprompter in the back of the room was marked up with red exclamation points and underlines to help him move along. As we've said, he's not someone who is known to give soaring speeches, but tonight certainly delivered it. He tweeted shortly before he took the stage that his son, Bo, his late son, Bo, had told him, just be yourself in the past. So seemed to be channeling that he would do that tonight, delivering the biggest speech of his political life. And it's just such a surreal scene, Nora, to see him and Dr. Biden, Senator Harris, and her husband, Doug, with these masks on amid this crowd. Just such a surreal scene after such a different week in American politics.
And certainly remember this image, because next week is the Republican convention, which is expected to look very different and feel very different. And so these two opportunities for the American electorate are to get a sense of what you want for the next 4 years. That's why the broadcast networks air these full speeches by both parties and political candidates, because the idea that journalism is what we need to make democracy work, and everyone should have the opportunity to hear the views expressed by those running for the most powerful job in the world. That wraps up the Democratic National Convention. Special thanks to our panel here at CBS News and all our CBS News correspondents and crews all across America. And tomorrow, a programming note, Vice President Mike Pence speaks with CBS This Morning's Tony Dokoupil as Republicans now prepare to take center stage. For all of us at CBS News, I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.